Welcome to Coach Bennett's podcast, where every run has a purpose, where kindness is hardcore, where this is about running, and this is not about running, where every starting line is a finish line in disguise, where rambling still gets you where you need to be, where pineapple will never ruin your pizza, and the sodas, adult and not adult kind, are always cold, and where there is room on the starting line for everybody. I'm Coach Bennett. Thank you for letting me be a part of your day. Let's get started. All right, welcome to episode 65 of Coach Bennett's podcast, the much anticipated lessons from Olympus, where I'm going to go through some of the more high-level things that I took from Paris 2024. And I took some good stuff. I got to tell you, I took some really good stuff because this was an all-time great Olympics. All-time great. Now, before we get into Paris, before we get into the lessons from Olympus, and yes, I got a little poetic there. Lessons from Olympus. That's right. Olympus. Mount Olympus. You know, where the Greek gods hung out and got into all sorts of trouble. And, you know, the Greek gods are wild. They're crazy because they're very human, you know? Like, they're not holier than thou. They are angry, bitter. They have flights of fancy. They get into all sorts of trouble. They have moments of real grace and empathy. And then they can just be downright cruel. I mean, they're very human. They're very human, the Greeks. This obviously isn't going to be just about Greek mythology. In fact, it's not going to be about Greek mythology at all. But I will probably sprinkle in there a few Greek mythology, little Easter eggs for you. I may, which is kind of weird, marrying Easter and Greek mythology. We're not going to get into that. But, I'll also probably throw in maybe a little side story about Phidippides and Marathon. And anyway, but before we get into all of this, let me just tell you, I'm back in PDX. That's right. I'm back in Portland, Oregon. Spent some time on the East Coast, had a really good time there. The beach was glorious. I gotta say, the weather in Jersey, come on now, it was just about perfect. And by that, what I mean is there was very little humidity. Jersey in August can be very humid. And I know I'm going to get some people in parts of the world that have more humidity and higher temperatures in New Jersey, and they're going to feel the need to let me know, oh, you think that's bad. We don't have to do this whole thing, that your humidity is worse than my humidity. I'm just saying, it's humid and sticky, usually in New Jersey. If it's more humid where you are, that sucks, okay? And I feel for you. And I'm happy that I'm not there. And if it's really humid in Jersey and you are where you are and it's more humid, man, I feel bad. I do. I really do. But you don't need to let me know that it's more humid there. I'm fully aware there are places that are hotter and more humid in August or any other month out of the year than the state of New Jersey. Fully aware of it. What I'm just saying is, in August it can get humid. And when you're coming from Portland, Oregon, which can get hot but doesn't get humid, it's like you're running at altitude. You get there and you're like, when did I get completely out of shape? And it's not the fact that you've lost fitness. It's just the fact that it's a greater effort you have to give when it's humid and hot out than you had to give when it was warm with no humidity. Now, the funny thing here, it's not actually funny at all. You may not even find this interesting, but just bear with me. When I was in college, I would spend a good deal of the summer on campus in college in North Carolina because I would take summer school every summer. So I would usually take 3 credits every single summer. Maybe I would take 6 credits. I would do both sessions of summer school, and I would work down in Chapel Hill. And then during, in between summer school sessions, or sometimes there was a couple weeks in August, I got to go back to Jersey. Oddly enough, now I'm saying oddly enough, and I was saying funny enough, and it's really not that odd, and it's really not even funny. And like I said, you may not even find this interesting, but I would come back from North Carolina to Jersey, and it felt like there was no humidity. because North Carolina's humidity was on a whole different level than New Jersey. Whole different level. I'll give you an example. It was so bad, the humidity and the heat in North Carolina, you couldn't run at 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. Jersey, you could. You really could. I mean, unless it was like extreme temperatures, which it rarely got to in Jersey, you could get away with running. Maybe you got to stop every once in a while and put some water on you, but you could get away with a pretty decent run midday in New Jersey. Is it ideal? No, but it wasn't dangerous. North Carolina, it was. Like, we would wait until we got the inevitable lightning and thunderstorm, and then once that had come through, everything was kind of cooler, not cool, but cooler for about 30 to 45 minutes. So we would all head out and try to get our run in before the humidity and the heat came back, because the clouds would dissipate, the sun would come down, and now suddenly it's even more humid, if you can imagine that. Obviously, the easiest thing to do for a runner was to run very early in the morning, but as I may have mentioned in the past, I was what we would call lazy as hell. So it was very difficult for me to get up in the morning and do the runs. So I often had to just wait for that late afternoon thunderstorm and then blitz out the door and get my run in as best as I could. But then when I would come back north to New Jersey, ooh baby, suddenly I realized I'm actually in great shape. This is amazing. You get rid of the humidity and I can rock and roll. Now, of course, I have to go back down to North Carolina, which was like this roller coaster ride was never going to end. Now, suddenly, I'm heading back to North Carolina, like so fired up. I feel so fit, so strong. And then suddenly I'm back in the humidity and I'm like, I'm terrible again. So it was an emotional roller coaster being me. Now, I'm not really sure how we even got on this. Oh, I was back in Jersey, and the weather was great. Low humidity, had a couple of great beach days. Whew, got to go into New York City, had a session at the Outpost Running and Walking Company in Little Silver, New Jersey, that Craig Siegel is the owner of. It's a wonderful place, just opened up in the last few weeks. If you're ever in Monmouth County, you should check it out. Did a nice two Coach Bennett's Talking, a night with two Coach Bennett's Talking, with obviously Coach Bennett the Greater, Tammy. So that was a good time. Got to see my family. My kids were all together. It was really, really a glorious time to get back east, as it always is. And at the same time, I'm happy to be back in Portland because that's home base right now. So, you know, here we are. The point is, I'm not doing this in New Jersey. I'm not doing it in a hotel room. We're back in the studio, and by the studio, I mean a very small room that has a couple posters and flags up on the walls, a couple of Yankee hats, like little plastic Yankee hats. I'm giving you a little behind the scenes here of what it looks like. A couple of little plastic Yankee hats that you get at like an ice cream store if you want a sundae. Now, I don't get a sundae. I get the same thing pretty much everywhere I go, just mint chocolate chip with extra rainbow sprinkles. Can you put them on the top and put them on the bottom? But I've got a suite of my little Yankee hats. I'm a sucker for that. So if you're an ice cream store and you've got the little baseball hats, I'm buying one. I shouldn't say I guarantee I'm going to buy one. If you have a Yankee hat, I'm going to buy one. And then there's just, 60, 70 books on the floor scattered all over the place. Now, these are books that I haven't read yet. They haven't even made it into my first queue. My first queue is in my bedroom on my dresser. I've probably got 60 to 80 books stacked on this dresser. That's like the first queue. Then I have the second queue, which is in this room, which has like my typewriter, my record player, my records, and then a bunch of books scattered on the floor, which really I should fix this place up. It's a dumpster fire. And then I have another room with all of my bookcases, and there's hundreds and hundreds of books. Most I've read, but I would say even amongst the bookcases, there's probably another 100 books there that I've never read. So I'm surrounded by books. The sun is out here in Portland. I've got my little Yankee hat staring at me, and I'm ready to talk to you about the lessons from Olympus. Are you excited? I really hope you're excited. You should be excited because this is going to be a great topic. And now this is what I want to do. I want to break down what I took from the Olympics in a couple of different ways. I mean, I think I look at it first and foremost as a fan, because most of these sports I've never taken part in, so I'm an outsider, and I'm trying to learn as I go. Some of these I don't really follow between the Olympics, and I really should, because these are some extraordinary, fun, exciting sports filled with great athletes and backstories and fans. But I think I look at the Olympics first as a fan. And then I look at it, I think, and this is the hard part, because sometimes it is really as a coach first and as an athlete second, and sometimes I'm experiencing it, I think, as an athlete first and as a coach second. And then obviously I'm just experiencing this as just a human being, because I think the Olympics is such a wonderful stage for such human moments. And I know it's about competition, but it's about so much more than competition. And I get into that part, and we'll sprinkle through what I mean about all of these things. But I want to let you know, I'm not just doing this as a race-by-race recall where I'm going to say, hey, you know what, here's a little Monday morning quarterback where I'm going to say, I think the athlete should have done this, or that athlete should have done this. That's not what this episode is about. If you want me to break down some races, I'll do that. Don't, believe me, you don't have to twist my arm. If you want me to nerd out and break down some races, or if you have some questions about certain races or events, especially in track and field, let me know, and I'll do that. I can do like a little special side episode that I can put out on a Saturday or a Sunday that's just breaking down some of the bigger races or events that took place in track and field. Or some of the other sports. I did watch a lot of the other sports, which I'm sure you're going to figure out over the next, 20, 30, 40 minutes, however long this is. But let's go with my first lesson that I walked away from. And again, this isn't in order of importance. It's just in the order that I wrote them down. The first one is, you don't need to be a jerk to win. You don't need to be a jerk to win. I watched 2 weeks basically of sports. And when I say I watched 2 weeks of sports, Tammy and I, Coach Bennett the Greater, we watched so much Olympics. We are Olympic junkies. And if the sports that maybe we were most excited about watching on a certain day weren't on yet, or we had finished watching, we kept watching the Olympics. We kept looking for and discovering new sports, new stories that we could fall in love with. And we found a lot. And I'll tell you what, across the board, what I saw was that you don't need to be a jerk to win. And more so than any other Olympics I've ever watched. The cool thing is, I think, for the most part, athletes that are taking part in the Olympics understand the stage that they are on is different than maybe the other stages they perform on throughout the year or years. For instance, you may be a professional football player or a professional rugby player. You may be a professional tennis player. You may be a professional track and field athlete. The stages that you're on, the non-Olympic stages that you're on, I think maybe don't call for it, but allow for a little bit more of the aggressive side of competition. I'm not saying you have to quiet the aggressive side of competition at the Olympics. I think what you're doing is you're allowing more of the stage that the Olympics is, the meaning of the stage that the Olympics is, to infiltrate you as a person as you take a starting line or get called to the mat or enter the pitch or go on the court. I think there's something about the Olympics that adds to the experience. Whereas maybe in a non-Olympic event, you are there without all of that stuff, the meaning, the power, the aura, the vibe of the Olympics. When the Olympics are there, you have a choice. You can allow yourself to be immersed in what it means or not. And I think more so than any Olympics I've ever seen, and I've watched a lot of Olympics, the athletes were more willing to be a part of what the Olympics meant in the bigger picture, of coming together, of nations gathering in one place to compete in sport, to battle in sport in a way where we could make everybody better. So there was less arrogance, less animosity that I saw. And I think it was pretty obvious. And from the people that I spoke to that are Olympic dorks like I am, it was kind of universal. I think we all felt that more than any Olympics we had ever seen, it just seemed like there was less animosity amongst the competitors. That there was this feeling of, you're going to bring out the best in me, I'm going to bring out the best in you, and that's why we're competing as hard as we can. That's what we saw. And you saw it on the other side of the finish line when people had completed their competition and they were hugging and celebrating each other. You also saw it during the competition. It doesn't mean that elbows aren't going to bump into each other. It doesn't mean people aren't going to be scrappy. What it means is there was a scrappiness and some elbows flying left and right, but in a different spirit. I don't know if I'm explaining this the right way, but if you watch the Olympics, I think you're nodding along saying, yeah, I saw that too. And I think it's a wonderful lesson that you don't need to be a jerk to win. You don't need to be a jerk to get the best out of yourself. So that was one of the things that I noticed, which, again, I walked away from and was very happy to see, because I've been saying it for a long time. I know that there's some coaches and even some competitors that think, in order for me to get the best out of myself, I have to hate who I'm competing against. And it's like, really? Don't you think that's a weakness? That you have to go there to get the best out of yourself? Maybe you should work on that. I worked on running in the mornings because I was really lazy. I realized I actually would be a better athlete if I could get out of bed in the morning. Maybe you would be a better athlete if you didn't have to psych yourself up by hating the people you're competing against. That's not me saying you have to limit how much you want to beat them. What I'm saying is, maybe you should be channeling more positive forms of fuel. That's it. All right, here's another one. Passion often leads to perseverance. That's right. Passion leads to perseverance. Now, I've had a couple of conversations. Well, I shouldn't say conversations, because if people say stuff like this, I'll usually just ignore them. But on social media, especially since the last couple of podcasts have been about confidence, patience, hope. I've been talking about joy a lot. I'll get people every once in a while that will, post or comment and say something like, discipline trumps passion, or, I'll take discipline over motivation, and blah, blah, blah. I know you're so hardcore. I know. But what I don't think they understand is that passion for your sport, passion for your team, passion for your craft is what's going to lead to perseverance. You may call it discipline, but I'll tell you what, you're going to be better if the discipline you have in your craft, in your sport, is motivated by passion for your sport. If the discipline is motivated by just discipline, like rote memorization when it comes to a test, you're not going to get out of it what you could. You see it time and again with athletes that find success in the sport, especially those athletes that maybe didn't find the success initially in the sport for a host of reasons, but eventually found the success. That the reason why they stayed in the sport, the reason why they kept going back to the gym, the reason why they may have left the sport for a little while and then found their way back to a starting line was passion. It was love for the sport. That's what it was. It wasn't discipline. I'm so hardcore. Look how many days in a row I can run. No, it was, this is what I love to do. And I realized the work I had to do was worth it because of the love I had for it. That's what I'm talking about. It's the passion that leads to perseverance. And what you can do is you can look up those words and you can see they hang out. They're friends, really good friends. In fact, I think I saw them holding hands. That's all I'm going to say. Passion and perseverance. So that was another thing that sport after sport, athlete after athlete, I kept seeing these comeback stories. Or some of them weren't even comeback stories. They were there and then they were back. You know, there was a level of consistent excellence that I was seeing. So a lot of times it wasn't passion that was bringing them back from being away. It was passion that kept them there at the top, at their best. Super, super cool to see. All right, another one. The fans matter. Oh yeah, the fans matter. Now here's the thing. This goes back to you don't need to be a jerk to win. You don't need to be a crappy fan for your athletes to do well. You don't need to diminish the other athletes for the athletes you're cheering for to do well. It's enough just to cheer. It's enough to cheer for your athletes, but it's also enough to cheer for everyone. I mean, I think track and field is like one of the prime examples of this, and I'll tell you why. Day in and day out, morning session, afternoon session, we were looking at 75,000 people that were on their feet cheering for heat after heat, event after event, throw after throw, jump after jump, race after race. And what did we see? We saw the best track and field at an Olympic Games ever. Now listen, I'm not taking anything away from the athletes at all. What I'm saying is there was something extra there. These were the best athletes ever at a track and field Olympic Games, ever. And guess what? We got more. We got more. Why did we get more? The athletes even admitted it. They said the environment was electric. It was exciting. It was positively charged. Listen what I'm saying here. Yes, it was definitely charged. Yes, that means it was positively charged. I'm saying I know for a fact it was charged. What I'm also saying, it was a positive charge. It wasn't a negative charge. It also wasn't that situation which was in order for my guy, my girl to compete well, I've got to diminish, put down, take away from your guy or your girl. No, it was we are going to cheer on these fields. And if we can cheer on these fields to be the best they possibly can, then guess what's going to happen? The best performances. And we saw it. We saw the best performances not just for first place. We were seeing best performances for 5th place and 8th place and 9th place in some of these events. We were seeing just incredible, consistently incredible performances day in and day out. Exciting races too. These were just glorious, fun races to watch. And I'll tell you what, tip of the cap goes to the fans. It was the best track and field fans I've ever seen at any event ever. And that's saying a lot, 'cause I'll tell you what, I'm thinking of 2012 London. Whew, those are some great crowds. And I've been at Hayward Field for some really epic crowds, okay? We're talking, 15, 20 years ago, Hayward Field, the rhythmic clapping, the electricity. But this was it. Paris, you're on top. I'm hoping somebody comes along and knocks Paris to number 2, because that's only going to be a good thing for the sport, for the fans, for the athletes. So the fans really do make a difference, all right? All right, next up, almost all of the Olympians don't medal. Here's a great reminder. Almost every single athlete you watched did not leave with a medal. Not overwhelming majority. Almost everyone that was an Olympian left without a medal. Think about that. Think about that. Now, if we're equating success, greatness, with only the people on the podium, what are you saying to the 99% of Olympians that are walking away without a medal? These are the world's greatest in their respective sports and events. And we're going to limit what greatness is by a podium that only allows 3 people on it? Are you serious? Now, I'm bringing this up because it's laughable. No one would say, oh, if you're an Olympian, you're only a great athlete if you medal. Or, oh, you went to the Olympic Games? Did you medal? No, your performance must have sucked. Never. But I want us to now bring this into the rest of our life and bring it into our own running. when we talk about ourselves and say, well, I'm not very good. I'm not like someone who's top 10 in my age group, or I'm not very good because I don't medal, or I'm not very good because I'm not all state, or I'm not very good because I didn't make varsity. Are you kidding? Are we really going to do that? Because we might as well do it at the Olympic stage. We might as well, because everything's relative. You know what I mean? I mean, the person who finishes 60th at the Olympics looks at themselves, or should look at themselves, the same way you look at you if you're 60th on your cross-country team. Are you working as hard as you can? Are you enjoying this? Are you being the best possible teammate you possibly can be? Are you really doing what you can? Are you racing with guts and courage? Okay, well then celebrate the fact that that gets you 60th. Because I'll tell you what, if you're not doing those things, if you're not working as hard as you can, if you're not being a great teammate, if you're not racing with courage and bravery, okay, then you're not 60th. You're 80th on the team. You're 100th on the team. That's what I'm talking about. If you're doing what you can do, celebrate it. Don't diminish it. You would never do that to an Olympic athlete. So don't do it to yourself. And don't think that you're so different than an Olympic athlete. If you're someone who's training for a marathon and you have the ability to train 4 days a week, okay, that's what you have the ability to do. 4 days a week. You've got a job, or you're in school, or you're managing a household. You got 4 days you can give. Not 7, 4. And each of those 4 days, you give what you can give. And the other 3 days, you're doing what you can do to set yourself up. So on those 4 days of training, you can do what you do. And then you line up at the marathon, and you run the marathon, and you try to do the plan that you've set. But then you know you've got to adjust, and you know that you're going to struggle. And when it struggles, you deal with it. And on the last straightaway, your arms are pumping, feel like you're filled with concrete, and there's battery acid in your veins, and you're breathing fire, and you're coming down the last straightaway, and you finish, and that was all you could give. Well, somebody explained to me how that's different than an Olympian that dedicates their entire life to their sport or their craft. It's their full-time job, and they give everything they can give. What's the difference besides the time on the clock or the distance of the throw? I don't understand what the difference is. It's about effort. It's about what you're giving. And if you're giving what you can give, and that's all you can give, then you're giving everything. And that's what you should celebrate. So it was just a nice example to just look at and realize all of these badasses at the Olympics, pretty much all of them, are walking away without a medal. And I hope they know that all of us that were watching, or at least all of us that were watching, should feel this way, that we respect them and we celebrate them, and they inspire us and they motivate us. And I hope if you're out there giving your best, that's how we feel about you too. Okay, another one. Coaching has changed, y'all. Coaching has changed. Okay, I saw, and this was probably most prevalent in women's gymnastics, because I think so much has shifted in women's gymnastics in the last 10 years, 8 years, that the coaching and the way the athletes were, and the way that even the commentators were talking about the competition, it was much more empathetic. It was much kinder. And what I saw was the highest level of competition ever in gymnastics. Isn't that interesting? It seemed like the organizations were more supportive of the athletes. It seems like the athletes were more conscious of how important it was that their emotional well-being and their mental well-being was taken care of just as much as their physical well-being. I think they were also aware that their physical well-being should be taken care of and should not be dismissed in the pursuit of short-term glory. I think for the first time we really saw that gymnastics was shifting, where there is a long career you can have in gymnastics. And guess what? Like I said, the competition was the highest level it's ever been. Take that, people who think you have to be yelling and angry and nasty and competing in pain. No. You can actually take care of athletes, and the athletes can take care of themselves, and the athletes can be supportive of each other, and their emotional well-being and their mental well-being can be taken care of, and they can be better than any athletes that ever came before them. Okay? So if you're one of those people, well, back in the day, we didn't take water during football practice because we were hardcore. No, you were stupid and dehydrated. And then you had to recover even more, which is why you guys ended up 6-5 that year instead of probably 9-2. Because you guys were not as strong as you should have been because you trained like idiots. You can thank your hardcore coaches for that. Them feeling the need to belittle you and humiliate you and train you into the ground is why you ran out of gas halfway through the season and you had so many kids that got sick or got injured. That's what happened, okay? I know, I get a little hot and bothered, but, it's the truth, okay? All right, another one. We're going back to track and field. Young and fast. Okay? Young and fast. This was, I would say, the youngest Olympics I've seen in terms of track and field athletes. And keep in mind, some of these athletes were athletes that won at the previous Olympics. So we had some really great young athletes that have been around for a little while, which is really positive. Really great for the sport. You want those names that are going to stick around and be great consistently so we can fall in love with them and learn their stories and try to support them over long careers. We also had a whole bunch of young, new people from all over the world in so many different events. It was so exciting to see the youth taking the mantle in this sport of track and field. And I'll tell you what, there's another group that are even younger than these athletes, and they're not going to wait. They're going to show up next year. They're not going to wait till LA. And it was just fun to watch because we had those great veteran athletes competing against these great young athletes, and it was just so much fun to watch. And there was just that youthful exuberance of these athletes. And it's funny because I would think that if we rewound to when I was like 22 and I'm thinking, when I'm older, much older, decades past my fastest, let's say, am I going to be bitter at the younger athletes for being so extraordinary, for it being their time to be in the spotlight? And I'll tell you what, no, it was so much fun to just cheer for them. And I think it allowed me to actually go back in that time machine and remember what it was like to have all of this potential. And it reminded me I still have so much potential. So a tip of the cap to all the young athletes for reminding this old dog, I still got a lot more. And I should be setting goals. I should be getting on a starting line nervous. I should be setting myself up for success and potential failure. I should be taking some risks. I should be setting goals, and I should be setting the track on fire. Now, is it going to look the same as some of these athletes that were in the Olympics? No, it's not. But it's probably going to feel close to the same. If I'm all out, I'll tell you what, when I was running all out at 24, when I was running for Nike, it felt no different from when I was running all out at 16 when I was running in high school. And the nerves on the starting line, they were the same. The satisfaction of a good workout made no difference if I was 14 or 22. So remember that if you're 32, 52, 72, or 14, all right? It's a lifelong sport. And these are the emotions that you want. You want to be excited. You want to be nervous. You want to be euphoric. And yes, sometimes the sport's going to break your heart. And that's okay too, because that's part of life. And I'll tell you what, as I've mentioned before, the heart's a muscle. How do you build muscle? You got to break it down sometimes. You break it down, and guess what? It builds up, and it's stronger and bigger. Remember that the next time your heart breaks. All right? All right. Lastly, I'm going to bring up the Olympic motto because I think it's really important. I think it ties all of this together. Okay? Citius, Altius, Fortius, Communiter. Now listen, most people know it's Citius, Altius, Fortius. No, let me just actually pause for a second here because I've got a question. Okay? So is it Citius, Altius, Fortius? Or is it Citius, Altius, Fortius? That's what I want to know. Because in 2021, they added a fourth, Communiter. So Citius, Altius, Fortius. Okay? Like that's what most people know, but they added a fourth word, which I think makes sense. So it's faster, higher, stronger, together. So that's the Olympic motto. What I love about the Olympic motto is that it's not fastest, highest, strongest. It's faster, higher, stronger. That's the motto. It's not about who's fastest. It's not only about who's fastest. It's not only about who goes the highest. It's not only about who is the strongest. It is always about together. Okay? Which is why I love that fourth letter. But it's about faster, higher, stronger. Can you go faster? Can you go higher? Can you be stronger? And can we do it together? And the answer is, I think, if you really watch the Olympics, we are at our fastest. We go our highest. We are our strongest when we are together. So the answer is yes, we can go faster, higher, and stronger when we are together. And that was on display in Paris 2024, more so than I think any other Olympics I've ever watched. And if you loved the Olympics, like I loved the Olympics, guess what? The Paralympics start August 28th. That's right. They start August 28th. I'm recording this on August 28th. I'm going to put the link to the schedule. You should get into this. This is going to be, I think, the greatest Paralympics ever. I think the momentum is there. I think the Paralympians know that they are going to shine. I think we're going to see everything that the Olympics was. The Paralympics are also going to be, if not greater. So, if you feel like your Olympic fix wasn't fixed, okay. Well, the Paralympics are starting in Paris, August 28th. They go to September 8th, I believe. So we've got greatness on display once again in Paris. So thank you for listening to Lessons from Olympus. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope if you're someone that was, kind of going through Olympic withdrawal, I hope this kind of helped. And like I said, if you want me to break down some races, let me know. I'm more than happy to do that. Make sure you're watching the Paralympics. And I think, really what I'm hoping is you take some of the lessons from Olympus and you incorporate it into down here off Olympus on the ground. Because that's not where we live. We don't live up in Olympus. That's like Zeus and Hera and all that stuff. And I just forgot. I didn't tell you the story about Phidippides. And I think I will. I'm not going to do it now, but I will tell you the story of Phidippides someday. It's a great story and involves the Battle of Marathon and Athens. And anyway, it's a really cool story. But it's not for today. I'm sorry, y'all. You've got stuff to do. I've got stuff to do. But listen, thank you for listening to episode 65. Thank you for listening to Lessons from Olympus. Thank you for sharing the podcast, rating the podcast, reviewing the podcast. Thank you for being a follower or subscriber to the podcast, depending on the platform that you're listening. And as always, thank you for being a part of this community. So until next time, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and I'll meet you on that next starting line. Thank you so much for listening to Coach Bennett's podcast today. And if you're not already following or subscribed to the podcast on whatever platform you're listening, well, I really wish you would because it helps a lot. Also, check out the show notes because you'll find a link to Coach Bennett's newsletter, as well as all the social media sites that I'm on. Places like Threads and Facebook and Instagram and Mastodon and YouTube, and even the artist formerly known as Twitter, whatever that dumpster fire is called today. You'll find a link to it because I'm on there. Thank you so much again for listening, and until next time, take care of yourself.